Hey everyone. Since Black Panther Wakanda Forever is out in theaters now, it's as good a time as any to update my MCU ranking. This is going to be a long one, so strap in. Now, I'm not going to be including any of the TV shows. As for Werewolf by Night, probably not, because that wasn't really a movie, it was more of a TV special. It was great, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but I don't think it qualifies here. As always, spoiler alert. Starting off. Number 30 is Thor: The Dark World. My thoughts on this one really haven't changed. It's good. It's the least good of the MCU, but it's still good. It's just... yeah, that's it. The acting is good. The characters don't get much development. Malekith is pretty much the worst MCU villain to date, and Christopher Eccleston deserved so much better. The one area where this kind of improves on the first Thor is the cinematography. It's not great, but at least it doesn't overuse Dutch angles.
Come on, Darcy.
You know, with all that power, I thought you'd head harder.
More on that later. The plot is fine, the conflict works well enough, the visuals are great, the music is pretty great. There are plenty of funny moments, like when Thor whacks Malekith while they're tumbling through the air, or, you know, Thor getting on the subway. Sorry, tube. My score is 3 out of 5. My next two are pretty much neck and neck. I honestly don't know which one I prefer, so... this 29 and 28 might change places. Hell, they might change places during the editing process after I shoot this, so I might have to rearrange things a little bit. For now, number 29 is Eternals. Look, this movie is very ambitious. It succeeds at some of the things it's trying to do, just not all of them. It's fairly character-driven, but unfortunately, because we're being introduced to 10 new characters, none of them get fleshed out nearly as much as it feels like they should have been. And even though it's 2.5 hours long, it still feels like they could have added in more character stuff, and the runtime would not have mattered. The main cast is all solid. Barry Keoghan, Lauren Ridloff, Kumail Nanjiani, Angelina Jolie, Gemma Chan, they're all great, and everyone else is at least good. Haraya Patel steals the show. He's absolutely hilarious. Barry Keoghan and Lauren Ridloff have great chemistry. Hell, they have better chemistry than Gemma Chan and Richard Madden. Bill Skarsgård is solid, but he just feels overqualified and basically just wasted in the role of Crow, because he spends like the first half of his performance not even speaking, not even being humanoid, just a creature, and then eventually it becomes more humanoid, and then it speaks, and then his performance becomes more than just physical, but he felt, yeah, like overqualified and frankly wasted. I do like that the plot jumps back and forth between past and present at logical points in the story, instead of just doing it at seemingly random points. The action is great, the effects are a solid mix of digital and practical, and the cinematography and editing are on point.
Fastos! I have to try and stop this. I need to get closer to Tien. Keep Icarus busy.
We've got you. Go.
Enough.
My score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 28 is Thor: Love and Thunder. Look, this movie is a mess, frankly. There were definitely portions of it that were cut out that should have been kept in. But at least it's an entertaining mess.
Whosoever holds these weapons and believes in getting home, if they be true of heart, is therefore worthy, and shall possess, for a limited time only, the power of Thor! General Axel, lead your army to that axe.
We shall do our worst. For Asgard.
And if nothing else, I'm excited to see how they continue Thor's story after the end of this film, because I was not expecting them to end it where they did, so I want to see more. Christian Bale is fantastic, which shouldn't be a surprise. I wish he'd gotten more to do, because he felt a little wasted. He sold every scene he was in. He did a great job of making Gore the kind of faux, affably evil villain I love to watch. But honestly, like, the acting is solid across the board, but aside from Christian Bale, Russell Crowe steals the show as Zeus. I'm sick of people comparing him to, like, more warrior-like versions of Zeus, like the one from Justice League, or, other similar versions, because, no, this is Zeus. Zeus is an immortal man-whore who sticks his dick in everything. Most of Greek mythology can be summed up in 5 words. Unfortunately, Zeus was feeling horny. That's it. That's most of Greek mythology right there. And Russell Crowe just embodies that perfectly. And I'm not an expert on accents, but from what I've heard, his accent was very good. Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, and Tessa Thompson are all solid, although I'm disappointed Valkyrie didn't lick her sword like she did in the trailers. And here's the thing about this movie. Apparently, there was a rough cut of this movie that was like 4 hours long or something like that. Okay, whatever. And I feel like when it comes to editing things and killing his darlings and having to cut things to shorten the runtime a little bit, Taika has a tendency to cut the dramatic moments first and then the comedic moments. Which, yeah, it kind of shows. I would love to see a longer version of this with more of the dramatic moments added back in, and even some more comedic moments too. That wouldn't hurt. I do love Thor and Jane's character arcs. I wish we had gotten to see more. I wish they had been more substantial, but I liked them. The action is solid, the music is great, the humor mostly works. And yeah, it does repeat a lot of the same beats from Thor Ragnarok, but it also has enough new stuff that it's not just a complete retread. My score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 27 is Iron Man 2. This is another one where my feelings on it really haven't changed. Having this movie live up to the first Iron Man would be nearly impossible, and I think Jon Favreau knew that. So instead of trying to do the same thing but better, he just took it in a completely different direction and decided to make it more character-driven. And I think it mostly worked. The action that we do get is great. The hemorrhoids' lack of durability actually makes sense for 2 potential reasons. Neither of these has been confirmed, but either one makes sense. Either A, they're showroom models, they're meant for display, not actual combat, and Vonko just put ammo in them anyway. Or B, they're meant to be mass-produced. This isn't like Tony, where he makes one suit and he makes the best that he possibly can, and then he makes another suit and he tries to make it even better, and then he makes another suit and he tries to make it even better. The Hammer drones are meant to be mass-produced, so of course each individual one isn't going to be as tough as one Iron Man suit. They have to rely more on numbers. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Tony gets more character development here than he did in the first movie. Black Widow is introduced in the most badass way possible, and even Happy gets a moment to shine.
I got him!
And him only beating up one guy in the time it takes Black Widow to beat up like 15 actually makes sense, because she is an assassin, trained to kill or incapacitate people as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now, Happy is a good fighter, but he's a boxer. Boxing is a sport meant to wear down your opponent. It's not a martial art, it's a sport. I mean, it can be used in a real fight, but there's a reason that fatalities in boxing are relatively rare. I'm rambling here, but the point is, Natasha is trained to incapacitate people. Happy is trained to wear people down. Justin Hammer is one of the most underrated MCU villains, possibly the most. Sam Rockwell is just so perfectly smarmy, and I love it. This movie still pales in comparison to the first Iron Man, and that's my biggest problem with it. It's like the Lost World Jurassic Park in that way, just with fewer plot holes. My score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 26 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Look, I like this movie a lot, but off the top of my head, it's the only movie in the MCU that I would consider to be a little overrated. I still like it a lot, I just don't love it. My main problem is that a lot of the times it just feels like it's set up for the Avengers. The acting is solid, but the characters don't really get much development. The only meaningful change Steve goes through is a physical one.
That's 50%. 60. 70. Demon!
Shut it down!
Demon!
Shut it down!
Kill the reactor, Mr. Stark! Turn it off! Kill it! Kill the reactor!
No! Don't! I can do this!
80. 90. That's 100%! Mr. Stark?
The action is good, the musical score is great. Red Skull is a very good villain. He's kind of two-dimensional, but Hugo Weaving's performance helps him stand out, and Joe Johnston's direction is on point, so there's that. My score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 25 is Thor. As I mentioned earlier, my biggest problem with this movie is Kenneth Branagh's overuse of Dutch angles. Now, I get why he does it. I've seen at least some of his other movies. I've seen both of his Hercule Poirot movies, and I've seen a couple others. So, I understand why he does it. He does it because sometimes there will be something that he wants to fit in the frame, and if he framed the shot regularly, it would be too big to fit in the frame. Because the diagonal is always longer than the length or the width. So yeah, aside from that, this is a pretty solid origin story. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston are great, and Anthony Hopkins and Natalie Portman are both very good.
Thor, Odin's son, you have betrayed the express command of your king. Through your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war! You are unworthy of these realms! You're unworthy of your title! You're unworthy of the loved ones you have betrayed. I now take from you your power. In the name of my father and his father before. I own it all, father! Cut you off!
Honestly, I think Loki is a better villain here than he was in the Avengers. It is now canon that Loki was not brainwashed in the Avengers, even though it kind of seems like he was. Whatever, but I still think he's a better villain here. But yeah, the action's pretty good, the musical score is solid, the comedy mostly works. I will always love, I need a horse! We don't have horses, just dogs, cats, and birds. Then give me one of those large enough to ride. I love that, I will always love that. The score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 24 is The Incredible Hulk. This is definitely an underrated one. This is another one where my feelings haven't really changed. I like that it's not an origin story, and instead it establishes that something vaguely resembling the events of the 2003 Hulk movie happened prior to the events of this movie. Although the CGI for Hulk and Abomination isn't the best, this movie does give us one of the best portrayals of Hulk, specifically just how scary he can be. Like, we haven't really gotten a lot of that since then. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, we got a little taste of it in the Avengers. We got more of it in Age of Ultron. And I think that's about it. Edward Norton is great. It's a shame he didn't come back to reprise the role, but c'est la vie. I do love that we finally got Tim Roth back as Abomination, so that's awesome. And honestly, Tim Roth doesn't get enough credit for his performance in this movie. He is very, very good. And it helps that we get to know him a little bit as a character before he becomes the monster. Louis Leterrier's personal directing style really helps this movie stand out from the bunch, and the action scenes are honestly better than they get credit for.
Let him have all of it.
The score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 23 is Black Widow. This isn't top tier MCU, but it's fun and it's emotionally charged. This movie really should have come out before Infinity War, not post-Endgame. You would have to figure out where the hell to put the post-credits scene with Yelena visiting Natasha's grave, but I mean, you could easily just put that at the end of Endgame or something. I don't fucking know. You could have made that the stinger for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or you could have worked it into the Hawkeye show somehow. There were plenty of options. Anyway, moving on. There are a lot of visual effects in this movie that do not hold up very well, but for the most part, they're fine. Not the best, but they're fine. Because this is a prequel, it has a much harder time building up the stakes, and so anytime you have a prequel, you have to introduce new characters who the audience does not know the fate of, and get the audience to care about them so that there can be, literally any tension. It's part of why the 2006 Texas Chainsaw prequel didn't really have much tension, because we know most of those villain characters are going to survive. Scarlett Johansson is solid as usual. Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz are also great. Florence Pugh absolutely steals the show. Yelena is like top tier badass adorkable. Taskmaster is a fine villain, not great. I do wish that they had made Taskmaster more faithful to the comics, but I don't hate what they did here. It makes sense in the context of the story. I just wish the story had been different to accommodate for that. But whatever, it is what it is.
It's fun to lose and to pretend she's overboard and selfish.
Remove all the defense.
I know a dirty word.
That one and her.
score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 22 is Captain Marvel. Like many of the others here, my feelings on this movie really haven't changed. My only big problem is the plot, and not because it's bad, just because it's kind of generic. You have the fish out of water with amnesia, who is trying to figure out her past, and also has this superpower that she doesn't fully understand and can't fully control, and the people she's working for aren't who they seem to be, and you get the idea. Brie Larson absolutely kills it as Carol Danvers, and I cannot believe people are still complaining about her being emotionless and stoic for a lot of the movie. It's like, you say that like it's unintentional, when it was clearly a deliberate choice. First of all, Carol was raised by the Kree, who taught her that emotions are weakness, so she suppresses them for the most part, or at least tries to. And once she starts to reject their teachings, she still doesn't know who to trust, so she's keeping things close to the vest. The acting is solid overall. The biggest surprise, who I will sing his praises to the end of time, was Ben Mendelsohn. Because, yeah, up until this point, he had kind of been typecast as the sleazy bad guy. You have The Dark Knight Rises, Rogue One, Ready Player One, that shitty Robin Hood reboot, and several others. So, naturally, as the movie wanted me to, I was suspicious of him. And even after it was revealed he wasn't the bad guy, I was still low-key suspicious of him right up until the credits rolled. So, well done. The technical aspects are all on point. The comedy works. The dramatic moments work.
You're right. I'm only human.
The score is 3.5 out of 5. Number 21 is Iron Man 3. I liked the twist in this movie when it first came out, and now after we've gotten Shang-Chi and the real Mandarin, I still think they made the right choice. Because here's the thing, if they had reintroduced the real Mandarin into the Iron Man movies, he would have felt out of place. Because out of all of the individual series within the MCU, Thor, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, the Avengers team movies, and so on and so forth, the Iron Man movies have always been the most grounded in reality. Not completely grounded, obviously, but they've always been the most grounded. So to introduce actual fucking magic, not Thor's sufficiently advanced science magic, no, actual fucking Doctor Strange-esque magic. If you introduce that into an Iron Man movie, it's gonna feel a little out of place. And yeah, Aldrich Killian isn't a great villain, but Guy Pearce's performance helps him not suck. So, there's that. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. And frankly, Ben Kingsley is even better as Trevor than he was as Trevor playing the fake Mandarin. He's just so goddamn funny, and I'm so glad they brought him back for Shang-Chi. And honestly, this movie has one of my favorite portrayals of PTSD. I really wish they'd touched on it more in the movies that came out after this, but credit where it's due. They did a really good job in this movie. Cinematography and editing are on point, the music's great, the comedy mostly works, the dramatic moments mostly work, and the final battle is honestly pretty great.
Merry Christmas, buddy. Jarvis, target extremis heat signatures disable with extreme prejudice. Yes. What are you waiting for? It's Christmas. Take him to church.
Gentlemen.
A score is 4 out of 5. Anyone who has seen my previous MCU rankings will not be surprised by this. So for those of you who haven't, this is where it gets controversial, assuming it hasn't already. Number 20 is The Avengers. I love this movie. This is a great movie. It still has some issues. The main characters all get some development, but not nearly as much as they should have. There are a lot of scenes where the lighting just feels subpar. The color palette is kind of bland. And Loki as a villain here, he's just out of character enough that it really only makes sense if he's being mind controlled. But this is Loki we're talking about, so how the fuck do you mind control Loki, unless you're Thanos, of course. But that's not canon anymore. It's now canon that he wasn't mind controlled, so I guess he was just a little off after he came back from the dead. I guess that makes sense. None of the characters are developed as much as they should have been. Tony's attempted sacrifice would have happened regardless of any changes he goes through in this movie. Or at least that's just one example. That being said, this is still great. Most of the action is great. I absolutely love the water during the Battle of New York. It's the kind of thing some of us take for granted now, but back then, a water in a superhero movie still had some novelty to it, so well done. Cinematography and editing are good. The musical score and pacing are great. The writing is on point.
You listen well, brother.
I'm listening.
Do not touch me again.
Then don't take my stuff.
You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Shakespeare in the Park?
Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?
This is beyond you, Metal Man. Loki will face Asgardian justice.
If he gives up the cube, he's all yours. Until then, stay out of the way.
Tourist.
Okay.
Comedy works, dramatic moments work pretty well. My score is 4 out of 5. Number 19 is Avengers: Age of Ultron. There are a few reasons I prefer Age of Ultron over the first Avengers. They're both great. This one is just slightly better. And reasons being, the characters get more development here. Like, they got some development in the Avengers, but they get more here.
Hi. Company. Sorry, didn't call ahead.
This is an agent of some kind.
Gentlemen, this is Laura.
I know all your names.
Ooh, incoming.
Hi, sweetheart. Hey, buddy. How you guys doing?
These are
Look at your face.
smaller agents.
Oh, my goodness.
Did you bring any nuts?
Why don't you hug her and find out?
Sorry for barging in on you. Yeah, we would have called ahead, but we were busy having no idea that you existed.
Yeah, well, Fury helped me set this up when I joined. Kept it off S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files, like to keep it that way. I figure it's a good place to lay low.
Honey, I missed you. How's little Natasha, huh? She's Nathaniel. Traitor.
The lighting is much better. And Ultron here is a better villain than Loki was in the Avengers. This is the one where they kind of started to overload on the quips. Thankfully, they have reined it in a little more since then, but I only mind a little. Most of them are funny, so that's fine. There are enough dramatic moments that I can forgive it to a certain extent. The action is just as good, if not better. The Quicksilver slow-mo scenes are very good. Unfortunately, this came out a year after X-Men Days of Future Past, so they didn't quite have the same novelty they did with that movie, but they're still pretty good here. Yeah, music's great, cinematography and editing are on point, set design, costume design. Well, most of the costume design is good. My score is 4 out of 5. Number 18 is Ant-Man. I will always wonder what could have been if Edgar Wright stayed on, but apparently he wanted this movie to be its own thing outside the MCU, which would have been cool. But, meh. What we got was still pretty awesome. Ant-Man is a fairly standard origin story, done with enough style and substance to work. For the record, anytime I'm talking about actors, I'm only referring to their performances in the movies that I'm discussing. I'm not talking about their personal lives or any controversies surrounding them. If I do, I will mention that specifically. With that in mind, Paul Rudd is a national treasure, Evangeline Lilly is awesome, and Michael Pena is hilarious. The action is very well done, they get pretty creative.
Located the breach, bringing him in.
Sorry about this.
What the hell are you doing? Breach is an adult male who has some sort of shrinking tech.
Sorry. Look, I'm sorry about this. Sorry.
That's enough!
The final battle with the Thomas the Tank Engine little train set. Oh my god, I love that so much. Especially when they cut or pull back to a wide shot that just shows that, yeah, they're fighting on a toy. But when it's up close, it looks super intense, and they pull back, it's like, oh yeah, tiny. Yellow Jacket is a bottom tier MCU villain, but he's not awful. Corey Stoll's performance helps him not suck, so that's something, but I wish he had been fleshed out more. But yeah, my score is 4 out of 5. Number 17 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ghost is one of the most underrated MCU villains, and arguably the most sympathetic MCU villain. She's not being mind-controlled. She's not being corrupted or manipulated. She's not straight up evil. She is in pain every second of every day, and she'll do practically anything to make that stop.
I didn't want him to be alone. When I woke up, my parents were dead. I wasn't so lucky. They call it molecular disequilibrium. A rather dull name, I think. Doesn't quite do justice to what it means. Every cell in my body is torn apart and stitched back together. Over and over, every day.
And I absolutely love the contrast between how fucking serious that is and how lighthearted the movie as a whole is. The humor is just as good as it was in the first movie, if not better. The action scenes are also just as good, if not better. The music is great, the acting is great, the comedic and dramatic moments work. I'm going to say those things for a lot of these movies, but it's true. Unlike a lot of other movies, this one gives us a positive portrayal of co-parenting and a divorced couple who aren't constantly at each other's throats. Thank you for that. My score is 4 out of 5. And number 16 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I don't really have any big problems with this movie, it just kind of doesn't quite live up to the first movie as a whole. The cast is great, everyone gets more character development to flesh them out more. I love it. Yeah, this one is a little more character-driven than the first movie. I like that. Kurt Russell is great as Ego. He understood the assignment. Let's just put it that way. There are a couple comedic bits that feel a little forced, but aside from that, the humor is just as good as it was in the original, if not maybe a little better sometimes.
He's got it! Yondu's got the fear! Go! Come a little bit closer, you're my
Drax gets some of the funniest moments this time around, and I love it. Batista is so damn good in this role. The pacing does get a little slow when they're on Ego's planet, but I didn't really mind because it was character stuff, so I was fine with it. My score is 4 out of 5. Alright, my next 3 are also pretty close, so the order they're in might also change between the recording and editing, so we'll just have to see. My number 15 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This is definitely one of the most entertaining MCU movies. Tobey Maguire was better as Peter than he was as Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield was exactly the opposite. Tom Holland is equally great as Peter and Spider-Man. Zendaya is good, Jacob Batalon is great, and Michael Keaton is just fantastic. I mean, the scene when they're stopped at the intersection on the way to Homecoming is just, ooh, so good.
I've seen you around, right, man? I mean, somewhere have we ever, because of even the voice
He does academic decathlon with me. And he's at my party.
It was a great party. Really great. Yeah. Beautiful house. A lot of windows.
You were there for like 2 seconds.
I was there longer than 2 seconds.
You disappeared.
No, I did not disappear.
Yes, you did. You disappeared like you always do, like you did in DC too.
It's terrible what happened down there in DC, though. Were you scared? I bet you were glad when your old pal Spider-Man showed up in the elevator, though.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't go up. I saw it off on the ground. Very lucky that he was there that day.
Good old Spider-Man.
Dad, light.
The plot is character-driven, the action is mostly great, and the humor is consistently funny. My score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 14 is Spider-Man Far From Home. I still prefer this one over Homecoming. They're both great, but this one is just like slightly better. Cinematography and editing have improved slightly. The writing is just as good, and the villain is just as great. There are two main kinds of actors. There are actors who can give a solid performance regardless of the director, and there are actors who rely partially or entirely on the director for their performance. Natalie Portman is a good example of the second category. Jake Gyllenhaal is a good example of the first.
See, that wasn't so hard.
Somebody get this stupid costume off me!
Jacob Batalon is still pretty damn funny. Tom Holland and Zendaya have great chemistry. They're just so adorable together and very believably awkward.
I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, me too.
To see the city a little bit.
You know, they used to execute people on this bridge. They would, like, put them in a basket and they would drown in the water. Sorry.
It's okay. Look, there's this thing that I've been wanting to talk to you about for a while.
Yeah?
It's our last night in Europe, and I had this plan that I wanted to tell you. I'm just gonna tell you. MJ,
I'm Spider-Man.
What?
The visuals are great. Especially when Mysterio is tormenting Peter with illusions. Here's why I really love this movie. At its core, it is not a big blockbuster. It is a big blockbuster, at least on the surface, but deep down, this is a cute little teen rom-com movie disguised as a big blockbuster superhero movie, which honestly kind of makes Mysterio the perfect villain for this movie, because he's also something small, pretending to be something bigger. My score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 13 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Welcome back, Sam. You've been missed. Scott Derrickson made the first Doctor Strange his own, but if there's anyone fit to take his place for the sequel, it's Sam fucking Raimi. My opinion of this movie has changed slightly in that I don't think it's quite as good as the first Doctor Strange, but it's still pretty damn great. I love that this movie pushes the limits of the PG-13 rating with its action and violence. I mean, there's a shot where Elizabeth Olsen is covered in oil or something from the Ultron bots, and if that was blood, this movie would be rated R. But yeah, Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch are great, and Chiwetel Ejiofor, Benedict Wong, Rachel McAdams, and several other actors whose names I won't spoil are all very good. However, the standout here is Xochitl Gomez. Her age makes MCU Americate highly unlikely, but honestly, I'm fine with it, because she's fantastic.
You're gonna take my power, aren't you? Before Wanda can. It's okay. I understand now.
Unfortunately, this is the Multiverse of Madness, but they didn't really do as much with the multiverse as I was hoping. Everything Everywhere All at Once did a much better job with that, so there is that. Like, the difference between those two movies is the difference between a great movie and cinema. The conflict works, the plot is character-driven. Like in the first Doctor Strange, this movie understands that the climax of a superhero movie doesn't necessarily have to be a big fight. Violence isn't the only way to defeat the supervillain. Sometimes you have to trap them in a time loop. Other times, you have to give them exactly what they think they want. I mean, the shot of just our Wanda on her knees. 838 Wanda is like approaching her and like reaching out to touch her cheek. Our Wanda just looks away in shame.
No good could be loved.
It's just... oh, it's so damn good. The score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 12 is Avengers Endgame. Yeah, this movie still has the best third act of any MCU movie. The rest of it is still great, it's just not quite as great. Damn near everyone's character development pays off here in some way. There are a shitload of callbacks, but none of them feel forced. The action is great. The music is some of the best in the entire MCU. Plot conveniences and contrivances aside, the story works. And this is another one where my thoughts on this movie really haven't changed. It's great. It's not perfect, but it's still freaking great. A score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 11 is Black Panther. This is yet another one where my opinion hasn't really changed. It did not deserve a Best Picture nomination, but I would argue that it deserved the other Oscar nominations it got. I don't know if it deserved to win them all, but it deserved the other nominations. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. He was fantastic as T'Challa. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger is one of the best MCU villains to date, and Shuri is absolutely hilarious. Shuri and M'Baku are low-key the standouts here. Like some of the other movies here, the plot is character-driven and it works. The conflict works because the characters' goals are in direct conflict with each other. The musical score is one of the best in the MCU.
You know, you look just like your old man. I made the plane.
Get out of here, boss.
The special effects are mostly great. They get kind of wonky in the final battle, but I don't blame the effects artists at all. I blame the people who rushed them. The score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 10 is Doctor Strange. The Asshole's Redemption, or whatever you want to call it, is one of my favorite character arcs, and this movie does it better than most. If Ant-Man was Iron Man but tiny, this movie is Iron Man but on drugs. Or something like that. Benedict Cumberbatch and Tilda Swinton are great. I understand there's some controversy with her casting. Caecilius isn't the best villain, but he's not bad, and Mads Mikkelsen's performance is on point. The visuals are fantastic, especially when time slows down as the Ancient One is dying.
You have to return to your body now. You don't have time.
Time is relative. Your body hasn't even hit the floor yet. I've spent so many years peering through time, looking at this exact moment, but I can't see past it. I've prevented countless terrible futures, and after each one there's always another, and they all lead here, but never further.
You think this is where you die?
You wonder what I see in your future?
No. Yes?
I never saw your future, only its possibilities. You have such a capacity for goodness. You always excelled, but not because you craved success, but because of your fear of failure.
It's what made me a great doctor.
It's precisely what kept you from greatness. Arrogance and fear still keep you from learning the simplest and most significant lesson of all.
Which is?
It's not about you.
And the final showdown between Doctor Strange and Dormammu is awesome, especially because it teaches you the importance of saving your game before you fight the final boss. My score is 4.5 out of 5. Number 9 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie does an outstanding job of creating a sense of dread.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Mobilize strike units, 25th floor.
Whereas the first Captain America had a very black and white conflict, good versus evil, not really anything in between. This movie dives headfirst into the gray area, and I love it for it. Cap gets more character development here than he did in First Avenger or The Avengers. Probably more, honestly, probably more than both combined. Alexander Pierce is one of the best villains in the MCU, and, well, Bucky is one of the best characters in the MCU. He doesn't get to be a villain for very long, it's just like most of this movie, but he is a pretty great villain. And yeah, he's part of the reason this movie does such a good job of creating a sense of dread. The emotional moments work very well. There's not a ton of comedy, but the comedic moments work. And the movie even manages to avoid having an egregious exposition dump by adding in the ticking clock of an inbound missile and having be revealed that Zola is expositing to distract Cap and Black Widow. My score is 4.5 out of 5. And number 8 is Captain America: Civil War. The conflict between these characters is so well done. Everyone picks the side that makes sense given their character development, and that includes Natasha starting off on Team Iron Man but then switching to Team Cap. Zemo is one of the best MCU villains, and his whole plan is a great example of how to subvert expectations, because we're set up to expect the big final battle between Iron Man, Cap, Bucky, and maybe someone else, them fighting the other Winter Soldiers. Instead, we get something a lot more personal, and it's better for it.
Oh, wait, Tony.
Did you know? I didn't know it was him.
Shut me, Rogers. Did you know?
Yes.
So the color palette is kind of bland, but I didn't really mind that much. Cinematography and editing are on point. The musical score is fantastic. The score is 4.5 out of 5. And number 7 is Thor Ragnarok. I really hope Taika Waititi gets this shit together for whatever movie he makes next, because this is one of the movies that proves just how talented he can be. This movie is visually stunning, well written, and absolutely hilarious without skimping on dramatic moments. Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Cate Blanchett, Tessa Thompson, Mark Ruffalo, and Jeff Goldblum are all great. Doctor Strange's cameo is definitely a highlight. And the 40 or so seconds he and Loki are on screen together, that alone is worth the price of admission. And there are so many highlights. The actors putting on the little play. And, oh, I actually really liked that they came back for Love and Thunder. I forgot to mention that. But they're hilarious. He's a friend from work.
What can we say about him? Well, he's unique. There's none like him. I feel a special connection with him. He's undefeated. He's the reigning. He's the defending. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you your incredible
to get off this planet.
The flashback to the Valkyries fighting Hela is gorgeous, and yeah, there's so many great moments in this movie. It's a great movie. My score is 5 out of 5. Number 6 is Avengers Infinity War. I really hope we get more villain protagonists in the MCU, because I love what they did with Thanos in this movie. Because, make no mistake, he is the main character here. The Avengers and the Guardians and those guys, they're just the hero antagonists.
Wakanda forever!
There are some bits of CGI that aren't that good, but I don't really mind. They don't stick out like a sore thumb or anything. The acting is great, the script is tight, the music is great. It's just, this is a great fucking movie. The comedic and dramatic moments both work, and they never clash. There's no clashing of tones. They're meshed together very well. The score is 5 out of 5. Number 5 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie is a must-see for any MCU fan who is mature enough not to throw a goddamn fit when they have to read subtitles. You know who you are. I apologize if I butcher any of these names. I will do my best. Simu Liu, Tony Luang Chuai, Menger Zhang, Fala Chen, and Awkwafina are all great, and Michelle Yeoh stands out from the supporting cast. The script is tight. It occasionally dips its feet back into the established MCU formula, but otherwise it does its own thing, and I love it. The leads are all fleshed out, they get plenty of development. Zhu Wenwu, or the Mandarin, or whatever you want to call him, one of the best villains in the MCU, hands down. The villains are stunning, and the different color palettes help each location stand apart. The action is great, with the fight choreography is just outstanding. And honestly, unlike a lot of other movies in the franchise, the fight against the big CGI villain actually kind of felt earned here. It didn't feel out of place. So, thank you for that. And the musical score is very, very good. The score is 5 out of 5. Number 4 is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I'm going to be in the minority, but yeah, I prefer this movie over the first one. And not just because of the third act. I mean, just the movie as a whole. I mean, there is definitely a Chadwick Boseman-shaped hole missing, but with the exception of that, this movie takes everything that the first movie did and does it just as well, if not better. Just like with Killmonger, Namor is one of the best villains in the MCU. He is fleshed out, he gets his own character arc, along with our heroes. I cannot believe this is Tenoch Huerta's first movie role. He is just fantastic. Letitia Wright is also fantastic. Yeah, behind-the-scenes stuff, a little icky, but her performance is fantastic. Again, I apologize if I butcher any of these names. Lupita Nyong'o, Denai Guerrero, Winston Duke, Florence Kasumba, Michaela Cole, Martin Freeman, and Angela Bassett are all good, if not great. That being said, aside from Namor, Dominique Thorne as Riri is the standout. Ironheart, yeah, they're clearly just setting up the Ironheart show that's coming out next year, but Riri and Namor were the standouts here, hands down.
Get out of my dorm. Get out. Hey, I'm warning you, do not take another step toward me.
See how they teach the children to treat their guests.
Put this spear in here. Who brought a spear in here?
I like her.
Hey, put it down, put it. You'll hurt yourself. Come on.
It's all right, princess. Small girl. I am going to give you 2 options. You can come to Wakanda, conscious or unconscious.
You need to be conscious of the way that you look. Walking around here with that ash on your head.
Oh, it's funny.
No, it's not.
I told you.
You look good.
The action is consistently great, and the final battle is one of the most brutal in the MCU. I absolutely love it. Cinematography and editing are just as great, if not better. The musical score is, honestly, slightly better. Ryan Coogler's directing has improved slightly. The score is 5 out of 5. My number 3 is Spider-Man: No Way Home. John Watts really stepped up his game for this movie. You don't have to have seen Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy or the Amazing Spider-Man films to enjoy this movie, but it certainly helps. For all the things this movie succeeds at, the most important one is that the plot is character-driven. Everything kicks off because Peter is just trying to do the right thing, but things go wrong. And so he has to scramble to try to fix everything. And, it's so well done. His inner conflict is directly connected to the external conflict, and that's why it works. There's fan service, but it never feels egregious. It feels earned, so that helps. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield slip right back into those roles, and they are great. The whole cast is great, honestly.
Oh, what the hell?
is going on out there? I keep yelling at you, Peter 2, Peter 2, Peter 2.
I know, but I thought you were Peter 2.
What? I'm not Peter 2.
Stop arguing, both of you. Listen to Peter 1. Look, we're clearly not very good at this.
I know, we suck. I don't know how to work as a team.
Me neither. Well, I do. I have been in a team, okay? I don't want to brag, but I will. I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
What is that?
Wait, you don't have the Avengers?
Is that a band? Are you in a band?
No, I'm not in a band. No, the Avengers is Earth's mightiest. How's this helping? Look, it's not important. All we gotta do is focus, trust your tingle, and coordinate our attacks, okay?
Yes. Okay. Let's pick one target.
Right.
And we take them off the board one at a time.
Now you got it. Okay, Peter 1, Peter 2.
Peter 2.
Peter 3.
Peter 3.
All right, let's do this. Ready?
Wait. I love you guys. Thank you.
All right, let's do this.
Let's go.
The action is great. Yeah, the visual effects are fantastic. There were some things that were very obviously digital or practical, but for the most part, I couldn't really tell. So that was nice. My score is 5 out of 5. Number 2 is Iron Man. This movie set the bar really fucking high, and it still holds up pretty damn well. I mean, it's definitely a product of its time, given that some of the villains are Middle Eastern terrorists, but it doesn't do that badly. Not the kind of thing you would see if the movie had been made 10 years later. But no, this is Jon Favreau's masterpiece. This is a perfect example of how to take a character who should be a villain and turn him into a hero. It's also one of the best superhero origin stories of all time. Robert Downey Jr. was perfect casting for Tony Stark. Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane is one of the most underrated villains in the MCU. He is absolutely... he's so damn great. Apparently most of the movie's dialogue was improvised. They didn't have a completed script. They just had an outline of events. Like, the action scenes and stuff like that were planned out meticulously. But most of the dialogue scenes were improvised, and honestly, I love it. Jon Favreau has described this movie as being like a $140 million student film, and it is much better than that description might have you believe. The comedic moments are funny, the dramatic moments work, character arcs work, the special effects hold up really, really well. The action, music, cinematography, editing, writing, all great. My score is 5 out of 5. Finally, my number 1 is Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn is fucking awesome. Full stop. Cast is great. The characters are your group of lovable misfits, and they work so well. The performances are on point. The writing is great. Ronan isn't the best MCU villain, but he's good. He's good enough. He's what this movie needed. The soundtrack and original score are great. Cinematography, editing are great. The action is very well done.
But it's not something I would ever say about myself.
This wasn't the plan.
Put him in the bag! Put him in the bag! No! Not her, him! Learn genders, man! You're out hiding! That's not fair! Take it easy!
The humor is consistently funny. The dramatic and emotional moments work very well. And they even managed to avoid the typical exposition dumps that you would normally see, like when the group is all gathered together trying to make a plan. You'd expect there to be a lot of exposition there, but no. They put exposition in other places so that they can use that scene to tell jokes. And honestly, well fucking done. A score is 5 out of 5. Hey everyone, let me know what you think. What's your ranking? Like and subscribe and all that, and, well, tell me your thoughts. If you don't like the video, subscribe anyway, and tell me why you don't like it in the comments. I welcome the feedback. That way you'll be notified when I upload new videos, and you can tell me why those ones suck too. That's all for now. Stay safe in these crazy times.